The Bear Essentials podcast gives older bears a place to gather for real talk regarding topics and issues that they can relate to. Here at The Bear Essentials, we aren't just having conversations. We are looking to provide actionable intelligence through real-life experience and expertise of our guests. Our mission is to build a strong community that elevates and motivates people to go beyond their limiting beliefs by helping them realize that getting older is not an excuse to hibernate on their goals, but a reason to work harder.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Charles Wallace. Today's guest spent 19 years on nuclear submarines in the British Royal Navy. And today, he is a well-known leadership consultant. So, without further ado, let's jump on into my interview with Gordon Foote.
But first, a word from our sponsor. Wolfinger Consulting, experts who have achieved real results for their clients, including complying efficiently and successfully with overwhelming discovery orders, passing difficult third-party security audits, and deploying bleeding-edge technology platforms to control and preserve corporate information. Let them show you what Wolfinger Consulting can do for you. Be sure to check out their webpage at wolfingerforensics.com. Hey, Gordon, how you doing today? Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, absolutely fantastic to be here, but being part of what you do. I know you've got a fantastic audience, the viewers and the listeners out there, so I hope I've got something inspirational to say.
I am sure you will. You know, before we start, though, I think it's we have to mention this. Let's tell the audience where you're actually at currently doing this interview from.
Well, you could tell by my accent. I'm across the pond. So my name's Gordon Foote. I'm British, and I'm a seafarer. So hopefully I'm going to impart on you guys out there a little bit of knowledge about the Maritime. That's what I'm all about. 4 decades in the Maritime. And yeah, I happen to be on a ship. And at this present moment in time, I'm in a port in Brest in France. And the ship I'm on is currently doing some what we call sort of seabed mapping, some hydrographic survey, looking at putting a interconnector power cable between France and Ireland. So we have to look at the seabed, see how many rocks are there, where we can put this cable in next year and things like that. Really interesting work. No shipwrecks. The weather's not too good, and that's why we're in port.
Well, listen, this is a first for me, actually having someone doing the podcast from a ship. So I thought we had to mention that. I think the closest I've come to somebody being on from France is I had a snow artist on before. He tried to do the interview from the French Alps, and as you can imagine, the connectivity for him was not great. Yeah. So it became a little bit, I think we heard less of what he had to say than anything, but it was still fun. But Gordon, so that's a little bit, could you maybe just dive in a little bit more to your background for the audience?
Yeah, I was going to say, leading off on the communication thing, I mean, we all take for granted those landlubbers on land that have the broadband and the fast internet connections, and we don't think anything of it. But if you try to go to some of the extremes or the mountainous areas or rural areas, you don't have so much good connectivity, and the Maritime is no different. So we have technology that does allow us some form of communication, and it's only getting better. In the last decade, it has got better. But yeah, that is always a problem, communication. So I know we've postponed this a couple of times, and I thought, no, I'm on a ship. I got a Starlink system. It should be good. And I'm in port, so we're not too dynamic and rolling around. It'll be good. So yeah, a bit about me. As I said, 4 decades as a mariner. So I don't know. I have to condense a life story into a very short sort of time frame. So I'll say how my upbringing. I had quite a challenging upbringing. I came from what we call social housing, not quite the ghetto or an American standard, no doubt, but yeah, environmentally and challenging and financially sort of a rough time in our country's history for a great amount of the population. But I struggled through that and went through schooling. My parents divorced. They then moved to London. I was then schooled in inner city London, where multicultural society, a lot of new things to learn. And it wasn't a good time for our country, what with employment or job prospects, and there wasn't much of a future. But I'd always wanted to join the Navy. Yeah, some people want to be a train driver or a fast jet pilot or something. I was just a masochist. I wanted to go to sea, I think, go in the ships. So I joined the Navy at 17. That's the UK Armed Forces. joined the Navy and volunteered for the submarine service. So I can brush on that a little bit. I can't talk too much about it. It was the covert operations. It was during what's known in our part of the world as the Cold War sort of era. But yeah, a very interesting lifestyle as an engineer, serving my country doing that. But of course, most of what I did, I can't even tell my grandchildren. But apart from working for NASA or something like that, I saw it as the most challenging environment I could work in as an engineer. And I went full throttle for that. So when you are young and naive and you want to change the world, that's the sort of thing you volunteer for. And that's what I did for combined 20 years. And when I retired, I thought, what do I know best? What can I do now? And of course, it was still the maritime. So I joined the Merchant Navy. So I'm probably one of the rarities in the UK of serving both the Royal Navy, which is now the King's Navy, and the Merchant Navy as well. And the Merchant Navy gave me a second career again in the maritime, but on top, out in the sunshine, I have life rafts and lifeboats and things that submarines never had. It was quite an adventure. And yeah, I guess some people say, I think I am privileged. I have had, a career pathway that most people, if they look at me on LinkedIn or CV, they go, wow, this guy's done all this. But of course, it comes with sacrifices. So I'll touch on that a bit later. But yeah, I do critical infrastructure in the offshore environment. So you guys will probably know it as oil and gas, or what you do in the Gulf of Mexico and stuff like that. So on a global basis, so I'm not North Sea. I've recently worked during the pandemic in Taiwan, and I was recently in Senegal, Mauritania, working for BP on their LNG project there. But yeah, a lot of it was to start with oil and gas, but also renewables. So back in the day, 15 plus years ago, when the UK and the Germans were first building wind farms. For those of you not familiar with it, if you've seen the big wind turbines generators on land, it's just the same, but we put a lot more in. And for the most part, they were along coastal areas, but they're now the sort of over the horizon type and deeper water. So like oil and gas, you tend not to see it. Like the maritime, really, we're over the horizon and out of view. But yeah, building wind farms around the world, that's pretty good. So that involves the hydrographic survey, seabed mapping type of stuff, and looking at the groundworks to start with. As you'll probably appreciate, in many geographical areas, there's a lot of EOD or UXO work that we have to do. So that's bomb disposal as well, making sure that it's clear before we put these foundations in. Yeah, and then we build these wind turbines, lots of them. I think East Anglia one was 102 turbines in one wind farm, and then we have to connect it via cables to the shore. And as the future is being, low carbon or zero carbon, trying to get to power households and our on-land infrastructure through renewable energy, which is fantastic. And in amongst that, I've also been very privileged to work with the Ocean Cleanup on two occasions. First in 2019 during their research and development phase, and then more recently, 12 months ago, with their System 2. For those that you don't know, you can Google it. IAMSP runs an NGO, a charity that is removing plastics, would you believe, from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So if you're not aware of that, as the name was probably giving it away, it is mid-Pacific. It's one of 5 gears that are on the planet, which is actually sort of a circularity of water flow, which means that some of the garbage out in what originates with us, naughty, bad humans, of course, comes out the rivers into the oceans and the seas. And then in some of these areas where you have this circulatory water, which are called gears, it does accumulate. And I don't want to distress you too much, but I'm serious about that. It does accumulate, and that's why charities and NGOs, amongst others as well, but the Ocean Cleanup are actually physically out there removing that plastics. And I think, and we're talking not the odd bit that you pick up with a little fishing net or something, but we had 20-foot and 40-foot containers on the back deck, working 2 anchor handling tugs, pulling their technology, which is removing this plastics, and of course looking out for the environment as well. So we are also very conscious of the whales and the turtles in that area, and also the fish. So being respectful to the environment and the biodiversity that's out there is key to all that they do there. Yeah, and on my trip, we did a 7-week trip, which is like 4 weeks in area, because it's obviously quite a journey to get to mid-Pacific on a ship. And I think it was about 14 and a half tons. So, and some of this is quite bulk stuff. So that equates to about two 40-foot containers and a 20-foot container. So yeah, a bit of a mess out there, but they're making a difference and clearing it up. So that's just one part of the maritime where you can be involved with environmental projects like that. So yeah, oil and gas, which people see as the old devil, but it is the hydrocarbons. It's what our planet and the Industrial Revolution was built on. It's what we all need to get by. As all nations have realized for events, both political and war related around the world, that energy is critical. We all have to consider our energy security. And of course, a mixed bag is what's best. So whether your nation is working with nuclear, hopefully getting rid of coal, if there's still some hydrocarbons around and related to oil, gas or LNG, but also wind is now playing a bigger part in that. And I think so will tidal energy, the wind energy, of course, and any hydro efforts that are being made. And of course, even in the maritime, we're talking about different fuels already, whether it's methanol, ammonia, hydrogen. So the vessels of the future are not going to be the old marine oil. There will be new ways of propulsion, and even in the coastal waters, electric, which seems a bit weird, but there you go. I remember somebody telling me years ago, after the steam ships had their heyday, really, that no ships from now on would ever run on steam. It's so old-fashioned. Whereas a nuclear submarine actually runs on steam. So to this day, we still have steamships. So there's a roller coaster about my life.
Wow.
Well, challenges, the pathway I've taken, and a career through the maritime, which has given me a great many engineering roles and challenges, but also enabled me to travel globally doing that. So fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. It's amazing to me. And I know since I've been connected with you on LinkedIn, I've been fascinated by, just thinking about some of the things that you've been involved in. Curious, Gordon, as you talked a little bit about your upbringing, would you say that your upbringing, your childhood was that kind of what pushed you towards the Navy, or was the Navy just something that was, you just wanted to do it?
How can I put this? A guy I admire a great deal. I think he's been on your podcast as well. Jordan Wiley. He was a similar sort of guy. He decided the army later in life, and I know that some that serve in the military might say, "Oh, it was a last resort," or "I couldn't get any other job," or "I didn't feel I fitted in anywhere else," or "I was looking for a family," or that esprit de corps. There's many reasons why people serve their country, and there's a whole mixed bunch, and there's no right way or wrong way. But for me personally, I was 5 years old, and my parents used to take me to like the Navy days in our local port, because that was a holiday that we could afford. It was a short drive down the road. It was pretty much all free. And I saw these great big ships, and I thought, oh, what do they do? At that age, I obviously didn't realize that they had guns on the front or what their purpose was. But I knew that they traveled the rest of the world, and television, not quite in its infancy then, but yeah, around that time, before National Geographic, shall I say, people's only outlook on the world was what you read in newspapers, and then what could be presented on TV. But I knew there was a great big world out there. So as I was growing older and was seeking adventure, and I've always been the outdoor type and seeking adventure and a personable, that was the other thing, making friends and being thrown in the middle of something and just getting on with life. I saw that as something maybe even then I didn't realize, but I was quite good at doing that. Yeah, and I think as you go through life, you take the hard knocks and that. So looking back, maybe I paint my background that's not exactly rosy, shall we say, and there are a great many people in social housing, and to this day, and I don't think it ever stopped me doing or being who I wanted to be. I just saw it as if you like, an extra challenge that I had in my life. So my stuff like that, you have to get over that. You have to keep going. So I think for some people it's not so easy, and they do fall by the wayside and struggle through. Whether it's elements of their life or life changes or trauma in their early childhood or early adult life. For me, I just saw it as an extra challenge. I knew I had it inside me. So I think really it comes down to the person you are. And yeah, true, you're built or you come into the world with some of those. And when you look at the world around you, you take on some of those aspects, and obviously the nurture and what your parents put into that. And I was very fortunate to have a grandfather who, my late grandfather, was a big inspiration in me and taught me many things engineering, such as, measure twice, cut once, all the old school things. And he taught me between centimeters and inches, because we were turning to the French style and decimalization. So I was brought up on inches, but then had to learn millimeters and centimeters. So all those sort of things sort of molded me and fascinated me. But I would say overall, yeah, I wasn't driven to it through circumstance or anything. It was a passion. That's what I wanted. That's what I aimed for. And I think people that are disadvantaged like me earlier in life, sometimes they gain by it. And overall, I'm going to say I wouldn't change my life or how I went. Why would you want to? It's made you who you are. So if there's some bad times in your life, or things that get you down, or things that don't quite go your way, I think I would say myself, I'm a stronger person for it, because I learned how to overcome. I learned some resilience. And boy, do you need that when you're serving in submarines. Resilience. And some topics we can talk about on the pandemic as well. What is resilience? What does it mean? And I think it's how it's built me. So all those childhood and early adolescent sort of experiences were never going to be anything that held me back, because I had the mindset. And I think that's important, to have the courage to step forward, be out of your comfort zone, push forward for what you want. And even though you're disadvantaged, whether it's the school you're going to or come your way. I mean, if you're more affluent or you live in a certain different geographical area, there might be a better option or something better you can do. But for me, I never looked at it that way. I thought, I'm here. This is me. This is where I want to go, and I'll make it happen. And I think that's an important thing. If you have the impetus and the mindset yourself to say, I want to make that happen, it's what I'm going to strive for. Because I learned a long time ago, nobody owes you a living. Nobody's going to do that for you. So, yeah. Going out and doing that sort of career, with the sacrifices involved, it needs a special kind of idiot or masochist like me. And I was brought up and well-rounded to be able to achieve that.
Well, you said something that I definitely want to touch on, because I thought it was interesting. You said that I knew I had it in me. I want to touch on that, because I think there's a lot of people, Gordon, that they're looking to find it within them. And you say you knew you had it in you. I look back at my life now, and I think deep down, from what I was to where I am, I think I knew I had it in me, but I don't know if I was as confident about what was in me. I'm curious to hear your take on how you knew it was in you.
Yeah, and what is it that's in us? I don't know. It's not something you can go and buy off a shelf. It's not some bespoke thing. It's not a training course you can go and do, whether it's for 2 weeks or 2 years. It's something that's part of you, that's molded you. And I think it's from early years as well. So like I've just discussed, some of the hardships that I went through, or, not necessarily trauma, like some people have a lot worse than me. I had an easy life compared to the rest. And don't forget, I've worked in West Africa and I know what real poverty is. So yeah, from a privileged white Western sort of background, I didn't have an easy life or an easy route. But, I think it's who you are. And some of the talks I do in inspiring people and children, and we can talk about that in a minute if you want, that I tend to think about more so look in the mirror. A lot of people go around in their own lives looking at other people, what other people have got or haven't got, or, looking at social media or the news or whatever's coming at them from outside. And I think a lot of people sort of remain on the focus of that and consider who they are in relation to everything else that's around them, which is right. That's how we interact with the world. But some of the things I say is totally about looking in the mirror. Look really in the mirror. Don't just look in the mirror because you're having a shave or putting your makeup on in the morning or whatever. But look in the mirror and look what's looking back at you. And do you really know you? And if you're happy in your own skin and happy with yourself, and you're walking a pathway through life with kindness, with empathy, with caring, with good communication skills, I think you go a lot farther. So I think it was a case of not me knowing or looking and recognizing something in me. I would like to say it was more about what other people were saying about me. And some people recognized that I had empathy. Some people recognized that I was kind or caring in some way. But the best part was they would actually tell me, rather than me have to infer it or me have a chip on my shoulder and ego and think, yeah, I'm good, I'm courageous, I'm brave, I work in submarine. A lot of it was the psychology of most of it to do with communication and about how the rest of the world is reflecting upon you. So when I look in the mirror, I'm seeing me internally, what I am, what I'm about, what I do. What do I do when I get up each day? What is my day going to consist of? And pretty much all of it is to do with the interrelation and the human-centric way of thinking about how to communicate. And because people said, oh, you're a kind guy, or, you're a brave guy, right? It wasn't, oh, I can believe this now, I'm that. What I do say, internally, I would think about what made that person actually say that. They didn't have to. A lot of people say a lot of bad things, the social media of today, and that is trolls and people denigrating it, and people, saying what, bad things about people. It's quite rare when people give up, although it's free, that sort of intimacy and communications to actually reflect on somebody else and say, oh, you did really good. So I think that's what it is. And I think a lot of that molding or knowing that you were doing good basically strives you to do better. And I think that's what I've done through life. If I can help one person and change their lives, great. If I can help 10, yeah, even better. Who wouldn't? But there are a lot of humans around that just want to climb that next rung. And if they're climbing on somebody's head to get to the next promotion or move themselves in the career or the life that they have, whether that's in relationships or career, then, unfortunately, there are a lot of people like that. And it's not always easy to remold them or educate them. Why should we? But I think if you give a lot of love out in the world, sure, a lot of that hopefully is going to rub off, and you can make those changes and you can inspire other people. And that's what I was leading to with the children as well. And I'm an ambassador for Maritime UK, which is a government funded sort of overarching maritime program that looks into how the maritime is perceived, marketed, and how we can talk about maritime careers for the best part for an industry that is over the horizon and children don't ever see, apart from disasters on TV, whether it's oil rig disasters or the Titanic. It's usually disasters that people know the maritime for. But there's a great many jobs out there and some fantastic careers. So when I talk to children, a part of it is giving my, if you like, an inspirational talk about, the not so good background that I had and how I moved for my career and how I strived for what I want. So although I wasn't that privileged and I didn't have all these opportunities, I made them happen for myself. And a lot of that is through the caring and the love and the people that were around me at the time and the people that paid attention or invested a little bit in me. So later in my career now, that's exactly what I do. I invest a lot of my time and energy, not least like a podcast like this, and just spreading the word, not only about careers, but through education and schools outreach, which was very prominent virtually during the pandemic as well, which was good. Yeah, and instilling a bit of self-belief, because we all have our own dreams. And sometimes it's difficult for the youth of the day to look past the social media and the dumbing down and the hate mail that's out there, to actually rise above it, strive above it, believe that you have a goal, understand that nobody's going to just hand that to you on a plate, and look and think about how you can go about achieving that goal. And more often than not, you're never going to do it yourself. It's going to take other people to be on that pathway with you and support you. And I'm part of that, aiding in that support, and hopefully inspiring these children to be whatever they want to be. And that goes for whatever educational background they have, because I don't deal with those that are new graduates or just leaving school. A lot of people more into, in the UK, we have, different levels of educational system or competency, like MVQs, apprenticeships. You can learn on the job, vocational work. Much in America has same sort of processes. So you don't have to be a bright spark, be a degree or finish schooling. There are many ways that you can make your own life's journey what you want and achieve your goals through just being the best that you can, not necessarily conforming to a format that says you have to have a degree, you have to have gone here, you have to have done that job for 2 years. No, just be yourself and strive for what you want.
Well, Gord, I mean, you're doing some really, like, a lot I didn't even know about, so I'm really glad I'm having you on, because listening a little deeper to all that you're doing, it's really, really interesting, and it's great work by you. One of the things you said, I want to jump in to leadership, but before I do, I wanted to ask you a couple things that you said there. One of the things I really took from that was that I do think us as human beings, it is important for us to take that minute to give that kind word or to give that compliment or whatever, because as you said, that can be the biggest difference, right? Now, you had that happen. I mean, I've had that happen also. What do you say to the people that the kind word's great, but I think it is also probably, it doesn't happen as much as it should. I think we probably hear unkind words How do we separate? And when we do get the unkind words, how do we kind of process that to not let it batter us down and make sure we just keep pushing through?
I think the hardest part, especially for the younger generation, and I'm going to pick on that now again, going back to social media, that a lot of their interaction is with that. Back in our day, mainly it was the community, the people, some of the people in your community that you looked up to, that you had respect for, whether it was the sheriff, the mayor, or somebody in politics that you admired. But more often than not, it was probably the team coach, or using American terms, that was that bit of inspiration. It might have been one guy, it might have been one woman that did something special in your community. I think a lot of that is lost now because it's so global, and everyone that's using social media as the feed that's coming into their brain is seeing things real time and global. And let's be frank, there is a lot of it, and not all of it is good. Mm-hmm. So I think it's like overload. So whereas before with a conversation, you could stop a conversation or be polite and move away from a conversation, or move away from that area, or choose not to engage, in a cafe or a bar or something like that, and be on your own. Now, when the people have got the phone in their hand, it's 24/7. It's just relentless. So I think some of the skills that youth need to learn is a filter. They've got to have a real good filter and some form of critical analysis. And I think the education system and parents have to teach them about critical analysis, working out themselves what is right, what is wrong, what is fake, what is not. And I didn't have those big issue problems when I was younger. So I do talk about that, even though I'm a little bit more senior. I do have a phone. I do know what comes in through it. So getting a balance with that is right. But even today, I think that the youth and the younger generation should look still to those people that are doing good in the world, those people that are making a difference, those people that are going to be inspirational and driving them on, so that when they do have these conversations, it's not always through text or through a machine. It's face to face with people. And I think because it's not just text or the imagery, it's people's faces, it's their expressions. It's when they smile, when their eyes open up, and they're so proud of you because you won that race. They're so chuffed for you because you passed your driving test or something. All those little bits, it's those showing those bits of encouragement. But it's not just one-offs, and I think that's what you were broaching on there as well. Just because you get a certificate for something, or just you won this medal for that, it should never be a one-off. There should be that drip, that encouragement. You need that support all the time. We're humans at the end of the day, and we strive on interaction. Yeah, and on those parts where we've discussed before about resilience, you need that human contact. As humans, we need that to and fro, that backwards and forwards. And if the majority of that becomes kindness or inspirational, then it's going to affect you. It's going to make you a better person. It's going to enable you to strive for what you want. If it becomes dark, if it becomes frenetic and presents, in your own psyche, the anxiety and the depressions, how is that ever going to help? So you've got to get rid of all those negative connotations. Try your utmost to avert yourself from either people that bring you down, don't talk nicely, or don't talk positively, and moreover, lose that negativity and get that positivity in your life. And believe you me, there are people out there doing it. There's people doing it for each other. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you've got to be in the right place, right space, right headspace as well. Sometimes to know where that is, to go and seek it and engage with it, and continue to engage with it. And there's many movements. I mean, Jordan talks about the Army Cadets. There's the Scouting movement. There's many for boys and girls, youth organisations, whether it's church-based as well, that are doing good. Where there's a lack of amenities, a lack of engagement, a lack of people that are inspiring or to look up to, then a lot of those youth organisations provide that. And I think that's excellent, even more so nowadays, I think.
Mm. Yeah, and you, what you just said there, as you were speaking, I was thinking about this, and I never thought of it this way. But you mentioned about the youth and being basically having to be taught to have more critical thinking and maybe some emotional intelligence, because I think it's a fine line. Also, we get the negativity, which is just you have to learn how to really just shift that away. But then there's also the risk of, if it's meaningless positivity, you start to create the younger generation of not really looking to be better because they think everything is always good. So I think you really hit on something there that we need more of. I think, I think there's ways for us to communicate with each other that it may not be hey, you did a great job. It might be, hey, great effort, but here's some things that you can improve on that'll make you better, you know? So I think that was really good. But I think that leads into my next topic that I wanted to get into with you. You being in the Navy on submarines, let's talk a little bit about leadership and what is that to you and how do you lead people?
Yeah, well, some people think you're born with it. I've just brought up a document here because I do some leadership training, and being on an American flavor, I've selected a few names that are in the military, and predominantly they're American. The first one was Lieutenant General David Morrison, who's in the Australian Army, and then Lieutenant J. Silvera, USAF. And the special one to me always is Admiral William McRaven, who's US Navy SEAL, who gave that speech. It's still on YouTube now. But if you want to change the world, make your bed in the morning. And another favorite and inspiring woman for me is Kim Casey Campbell, who flew the A-10 in the USAF. I've mentioned those because I use that sort of as a military background to try and inspire people to understand a little bit more about what leadership is and how to differentiate that between what management is. And I was writing a thesis about a year ago, some academic work I was doing, and I thought, well, how many books are there on leadership? Because there was a whole sort of couple of paragraphs that was all going to be about leadership. And I looked up, there's 75,000, I think, Google came up with, of books that have been written on leadership. And I thought, how many of them are actually about leadership? So a lot of them, I understand, are about process, how to do it, what courses to take, you know, how you can be the CEO of the Fortune 500 or whatever. And I thought to myself, and what my whole sort of argument was, again, critical analysis of it, was that not many of these books actually instill what sort of person you should be on a human-centric level. So yeah, there's a procedure, and you have to climb the ladder and you become the CEO, and evidently then you're a leader. But when you look closely more at what leadership means in the real world, it's not about process, it's not about title, definitely not about money or where or how high up you are in the company. Because my belief is that we're all leaders. We all have something to give within a team, because normally that's what we're talking about with leadership. It's not so much a one-man band thing. Of course, we can self-imbibe leadership, because if you're a single yachtswoman going around the world or something, your inbuilt leadership and who you are as a leader is going to count second to none, because you are on your own. There is nobody else going to come and help you. But invariably, we talk about it in teams. So it's a person within that team, and not necessarily, shall we say, stereotypically the alpha male, or the one that's got the most grandest title, or the one with the biggest paycheck, or the Ferrari outside. Within teams, and I'm talking about teams, professional teams that are working at a high level of excellence, dare I say, like in the military, in submarines, because you have to know the psychology of people. You're shut in a tin can for months on end. You have a professional job to do. You're doing it 6 hours on, 6 hours off. How can a human actually do this? So a lot of it is understanding that we're all leaders in our own way, and we can all bring something to the party, as it were. And I think one of the most interesting things, or important things, about leadership, or understanding about what that is your ability to listen, and that's actively listen. So if you want to be successful in a team or whatever, if one person just shouts, and this is this is the road we're going on, because I've got all the experience and I've done it before, that's never going to be as productive as thinking about what the diversity is in your team, and also the diversity of knowledge and experience, maybe of age, and maybe if a female in the group has a more succinct way of doing something and has thought about it in a different term than maybe a man has, then why should that be wrong? No, it's not. It's going to be totally right. So yeah, if you've got the title, and we all understand that most organizations work on some sort of hierarchical basis, I think being a leader is being able to provide the systems and the structures and the support for all those members that are in that team to be the best that they can be. And I think if you're just on the spreadsheet and you're working out who goes on what shift and what does it, you're not a leader. That's normally termed management, and that can be HR, operations, safety, whatever. That's management. But I think if you're a true leader, then you're somebody who's actually thinking about the people on a human-centric level. You're excluding yourself from any gain or advantage in that scenario, and you're purely thinking about how each one of those members can contribute to the best of their ability, so that the whole team succeeds. So that's the way I take it. And some of those military names that I've just given, they do absolutely fantastic speeches. They've done so much for your country, or in one case, the Australian government. They have rows of medals on their chests and everything. But you listen to the words that they say, and each one of those has done a podcast, and it's usually about diversity, equity. It's usually about human performance in teams of excellence, and you can learn a lot from it. And the thing I respect about most of those that I've just mentioned is that they're at the top of their pile. They've got a grand title like Rear Admiral or something, but when they open their mouths, you can tell they're leaders, because they're so human-centric, and they're understanding each and every one of the men, women, etc., that are working for them on behalf of them. And at the end of all of these sort of speeches, it's not ever about them. They just happen to have the title and have the privilege to stand up at that podium and deliver that sort of speech. But at the end of the day, it's recognition of the team that makes it happen. So that's what leadership's about. And I think we're talking about it more in a career structure or something like that. And but yeah, it's in geopolitics, it's in nationhood, it's thinking about what you are as a citizen or a nation as well. Some of those speeches that delivered. Yeah, and it's absolutely fantastic. But they're coming from a hierarchical point of view. So some of the other people that I admire, like Amy Edmondson, who works a lot on psychological safety, and Malala Yousafzai, who's quite famous and working for the UN as well now. So, there's women out there that are making a serious difference, and of a young age as well. So the stereotypical who's a leader, is the head of the UN or the head of a nation. It's not necessarily so. It can be somebody that's creating that influence in society, that has the maturity and the psychological aspects of the knowledge and understanding of how humans interact with each other, and doing that for good. And you'll find that most of them are decent human beings. And that's sort of a strapline that I use for a lot of my inspiring speeches, that it is quite easy. It's tax-free. You don't need to put too much effort into it, really. You just have to consider yourself, look in that mirror, and then be a decent human being. And I think everyone's lives would be a lot better for it if everyone thought more along those lines.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I want to ask you this because, and you may agree, you may disagree. So from a leadership perspective, I think more than anything, it's really looked at from almost a top down.
Yeah.
So we're always almost
totally
looking
wrong.
at what's that?
It's just totally wrong, isn't it? Why would you look at that? It's like the siloed thing and the hierarchy. We all have some sort of hierarchy. I mean, I've worked, in two navies, both of which have got rank tabs, and there is a hierarchy. But the modern way now, especially in this dynamic sort of technical environment that's moving faster than many of our brains can always understand, it's never a top-down thing. So some of those that are at the top is because they've been invested in, shall we say, the accountability or the responsibility. But if they're a true leader, then they will divest that to members within their organization, and that can be from the very bottom up rather than top down to make that happen. And I think the true organizations are either financially successful or can market and engage with people and sell their products if that's what their business is, or if it's an NGO or charity that is actually achieving something against all the odds and beyond anyone's belief. You'll find that the leadership within that isn't necessarily that top person. Sometimes it's that top person that has those leadership attributes and is a leader, but has used that knowledge and that influence and that experience to actually embed within their own organizations leaders at all the different levels. Because my firm belief is that we're all leaders and we all have something to contribute. And those businesses and organizations and relationships that are successful is usually because they have a greater understanding of that and utilize it to good effect.
And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you. When I say top down, what I was getting at was this. We have the people, I think a lot of times it's almost like they look at it from the very top, right? I guess what I want to ask is, as a leader, and I'm in leadership personally in my professional life, always curious about this. How do we as leaders, we have people that we may be leading, but how do we lead up? How do we almost in the middle here in that hierarchical structure you talk about, how are you successful to lead up in a way that you're not only leading and doing okay for your people, doing what's right for them, but you're also doing what's right for your organization. And you're not just creating that, that the distinct link between the folks you're leading, but you're also creating where you're having a positive impact from them beyond you to up above you.
I think that's probably one of the easiest questions, because if you're understanding leadership truly, and you're thinking about on the lines of kindness, compassion, empathy, I don't know, it's just a structural thing that we're now discussing, looking at the top and looking down. So, as a stereotype, we think it's easier because I'm looking at the people that I have power over, or I have control over, or I'm going to help these people because they don't know as much as me and they're coming forward or coming up through their careers. And I think that's a wrong way of thinking about it. Yeah, like anyone who's junior or younger, there's that sort of inbuilt structure where why wouldn't you help those people? But like you're intimating there about the people above us. So whether you've got a leadership title or somebody perceives you as a leader, like you've rightly said, it doesn't matter how high up the tree are. Actually, you're somewhere in the middle. People think, oh, I'm a leader or whatever, but I'm married. I've got a wife at home and I know who's the boss, So that's the way of the world. But yeah, for those that are above you, if you're talking not so much in relationships, but in business or successful businesses and that, and I think it's just as important for those in those positions to go out of their comfort zone and consider those that are above them in any hierarchy, or maybe considered a more senior leader, and have those important conversations. And some of it, like you see 360 or 180 interviewing, whatever way you want to call it, where instead of somebody like the top leader or saying, oh, come into my office, we're going to have a report or an appraisal. When that's finished, why not flip it? Do the appraisal the other way around. And that really, sometimes if somebody's high up in an organization, they maybe don't have always an open door policy. Maybe they have a really nice plush office and it's in the top floor, but nobody else gets to see them. It's the first opportunity they're going to know that something they're doing isn't quite right. And it might be structure, it might be process, it might be something mechanical like that, but it could also be culture or something that's more human-centric. So how they're treating people, how the organization is run, how the culture is formulating within there. Because we all know that those in top management or leadership positions, they'll have their ideal quotes of what this company is trying to do. And it sometimes doesn't align with their own behaviors, or in fact, the way that the company is actually progressing. So that's important. Something that's quite popular, I think, in America now, or in Europe, they're talking about shadow boards. So where you've got board or C-suite, there'll be a shadow board, and it'll be people that are completely independent. And I mean independent because they're not on the payroll, they're not part of that company, but they've taken leaders from similar, or not always similar, organizations, and invited them in, a group of them, to actually sit there when they're doing board meetings and then making, critique afterwards and commentary, which is always going to be valid because it's another way of looking at things. And I've known, I think our national football team, which doesn't say much because we never seem to win their soccer to you. We never seem to win the World Cup or anything like that. But they came across a leadership tool, which I thought was really invaluable, because the mindset of anyone in a soccer or football club is all about soccer, football. That's all they know. So what they did is they took a person from a charitable organisation. They took someone that worked for the council, like you would have a federal district sort of government body, and brought them in. And they brought a teacher from school and brought them in. And then they started discussing about what they were going to do. And it was obviously sport related. So it was very about the physique, the nature, how we can do it. But also, as it's all about a business as well, it was also about training and marketing. And it was also about, some of these soccer or football stars that are very inspirational for the younger generation. So it was about their conduct, about how they were perceived, making them, because they're obviously very rich or affluent guys, and they're quite closeted and don't meet the general public all the time. So it was giving them an understanding about the impact that they may not necessarily have understood, and probably still don't, the impact that their decisions and what they say on social media are having. So again, a shadow board type affair is really good. And what is that when you bring it down to basics? All it is just a different mindset. Somebody that hasn't traveled that one route, somebody that's maybe not blinkered so much, somebody's not got that tunnel vision, because we got that ethos, we got this culture, and we sell widgets or X, Y, Z, so that's all we're going to sell. We want to sell more of them. that drives you down a path that's not necessarily always healthy. So
Mm-hmm.
having these other external leadership influences is really good. And thinking about the maritime, that's not always easy. But I think social media, because I've played it down, I can play it up as well. Platforms like this, platforms like LinkedIn and that, which are more business related or career related, and trying to inspire people in different ways is one way in which somebody who is in a very higher leadership position can see people maybe like us talking today and thinking, wow, yeah, that's quite insightful. Yeah, I've not thought about it that way before. Maybe that's where we need to make the changes. So yeah, it can all be helpful. So talking directly to them, using more modern techniques of leadership or management processes within their companies can help. Using the technology that's now around us, like this, to have discussions at this level, and hopefully it changes. Sometimes it changes people's personality, because it's a lot of it can be age related as well. And you think, oh, the people in these senior positions are all older. They might be 40 plus, they might be 50 plus, and of course they came through their business and early business as a different generation. The generations that we are coming through now in their 20s and 30s were brought up with technology, were brought up in a different lifestyle, and also expectations as well. And some of that's got to be curtailed, and a bit of life lessons or reality checks sometimes. But you never want to blanket enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is what's going to push us forward and create and deliver great things. So yeah, we never want to stifle that, but tempering it, shall we say. And the only way we're going to do that is through conversations, and that's from the younger generation to the older generation. And I think it can be a lot more helpful if we're not hung up on titles, salary bands, for sure. And I think that the military, although it's very hierarchical, the UK military especially, is very good at doing that, because you're not just a dumb soldier. You don't just go from A to B because I said so. Today's technology means that they are thinking soldiers, men and women, and have to make decisions on the ground, and that becomes a better business, or whatever business you're in, or company for it. And I think that's the future. And people like Elon Musk, I think they appreciate that, because they can't go running around doing all the jobs themselves, because they know the best and they know how to do it, and it's their way and only their way. He selects people in leadership positions that make it happen all around at different bazaars that he's got his fingers in. So
yeah, I'm really glad I spoke to you today now, because I think I'm speaking for me personally, but selfishly, I think when I started doing this podcast, I'll be honest, I think I've learned more from speaking with guys like you, Jordan. I had Neil Jarrett on, Gary Bamford.
Yeah, Neil. Oh yeah. Top guy. Absolutely amazing.
Like, for me, I'm 30 plus years in healthcare analytics, right? And I feel like lately, over the last couple of years, I've probably, as a leader, have done more to advance myself as a leader by branching outside of that industry and hearing different perspectives. So when I hear you talk about the shadow boards and things like that, I think it's really, really good, because I'll be honest, I know when I had Neil and Gary on, I literally took notes, and if they're listening, probably I've actually used things from those podcasts in my professional life already.
But so let's be honest, why wouldn't you? Because we're human, we're all learning every day. And one of my big takeaways, especially with the school's outreach, is to do with continuous professional development and lifelong learning. And I'm a champion for lifelong learning. And sometimes I do find it, even with my own colleagues, to sort of impress it. So it's not evangelical or anything. I'm not pushing it down their throat, but I'm saying, why? Because you went to school, your high school, whatever, you got your high school certificate and things, and you come out here, why would you stop? Why would you think that's the end of the learning?
Yeah.
If you're proud, too proud to understand that, there's some sort of deficiency there somewhere. But for me, I just look at it. Well, there's younger kids coming along; they're going to know more about it. Sure as hell, they know how to operate a spreadsheet better than I do. I'm still struggling, sort of on the middle of the road kind of guy.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's it. It's done for me then. Some of the remote controls for the TV, I think I'm always looking around for a teenager. They're better equipped, more competent. So why would we want to stand still as we go through our careers? So Champion lifelong learning is a big thing for me. And I think the way I work it mainly and advising some people, especially those in leadership, like we just discussed there about how you can influence those above you, and that is say, why don't you just each year pick a little challenge? It might be something that you're not particularly good at. It could be something simple like crossword puzzles, or something a little bit harder like a language, or it could be something pertinent to your career or an offshoot to your career, or like you've just mentioned, thinking about how you can grow and become a better person by looking at other industries or allied industries and what they're doing. So during the pandemic, for instance, I mean, everyone was just sucking everything in through social media, but that wasn't always correct, and it was changing every 5 minutes. So things like online, because now we've got this technology. Even as a seafarer, I can go online, I can find the World Health Organization, I can find free courses, and why wouldn't I? There was a 4-week course on viruses and the exchange of viruses and containment. It was made for healthcare professionals. It was made for those working in hospital environments. But I mean, we've known since Napoleon times how to keep bugs away and how what hygiene was. But you'd be surprised around the world. There's quite a lot of people that still struggling with that issue. So, I did that course because I felt, well, it's a bit stagnated. Maybe some of my thought processes, because of my age, may be a little bit old or older in the way of thinking. Modern things. What have we got to do now? So washing your hands, how to wash your hands, that was all sort of basics. But wearing a face mask, why would we wear a face mask? So that course was free. Why wouldn't you do it? I had the time, I had the interest, I saw it as a challenge, and I was better informed for it. And in some respects, I was then competent at that level to then talk about it.
Right.
I didn't learn it off social media. Joe Bloggs, who drives a van during the day, was telling me how about hygiene. I actually got it from the World Health Organization or the London School of Tropical Medicine. That was another course I did. They were free.
Yeah.
You haven't got to have money. You haven't got to have a lot of time on your hands, and you haven't got to be a leader. All you got to be is a bit of critical thinking.
Yeah, that's
what's out there, because there's a lot of it and it's free.
I couldn't agree more with that, because I have this thing that I say, and I've kind of just adopted it over the last few years, but I try to even talk to people at my work about this, and it's that I look at myself now as that I'm an expert in nothing and a student of everything, and that's the way I approach life. That's it. And well, listen, I wanted one last topic I wanted to jump on here, and because I know we talked a little bit about before we started, and you mentioned it a few times about inspiration and some inspirational speeches. I just want to give you a few minutes because I think that everybody needs it. I think sometimes we can be a little, if we're not careful, we can be too busy. Like, we can outsource our inspiration, but I think we all need that little bit of inspiration coming from the outside. So I want to give you a chance here to talk about that a little bit.
Well, before we came on, I said, hey, look, I made a couple of notes, but I could talk for 2 months on this subject amongst a whole host of things. But it was social media that came through and brought this into my world. It was somebody that I've never met, but I thought it was very inspirational. So I'd like to read that, and I'm going to honour the person by naming them and read it verbatim. But basically, what I wanted to say about inspiration is that I don't see it as we're ever selling anything. We're not marketing this. It's not a product. Inspiring somebody is just that kind word sometimes, or doing something. Sometimes it's a doing thing. Sometimes it's a communication thing. But yeah, it's imparting that little bit. Sometimes it's imparting a bit of knowledge or education, or just saying something inspiring. And it can be 2 words, it can be a whole speech. But if it jogs somebody's memory, if it makes them sit up and think, or maybe it just, maybe if I did it that way, or maybe if I could just be a little bit kinder tomorrow. That's what I see inspiration being, and not moded as a specific format or anything. So without further ado, then I'm going to read this out. So bearing in mind, it's a graduation, so it's academic related. But this was from the Governor Pritzker, and it's actually in Northwestern University, US of A. And here we go. The best way to spot an idiot: look for the person who is cruel. Let me explain. When we see someone who doesn't look like us, or sound like us, or act like us, or love like us, the first thought that crosses almost everyone's brain is rooted in either fear or judgment, or both. That's evolution. We survived as a species by being suspicious of things that we aren't familiar with. In order to be kind, we have to shut down that animal instinct and force our brain to travel a different pathway. Empathy and compassion are evolved states of being. They require the mental capacity to step past our most primal urges. This may be a surprising assessment because somewhere along the way, in the last few years, our society has come to believe that we weaponize cruelty as part of some well-thought-out master plan. Cruelty is seen by some as an adroit cudgel to gain power. Empathy and kindness are considered weak. Many important people look at the vulnerable only as rungs on a ladder to the top. I'm here to tell you that when someone's path through this world is marked with acts of cruelty, they have failed the first test at advanced society. They never forced their animal brain to evolve past its first instinct. They never forged new mental pathways to overcome their own instinctual fears. And so their thinking and problem solving will lack the imagination and creativity that the kindest people have in spades. Over many years in politics and business, I have found one thing to be universally true. The kindest person in the room is often the smartest. So I thought that was really impactful. That's obviously going to inspire all those graduates at that ceremony at that particular university. Yes, and it was academic related. So he's talking smart because he's got a lot of smart kids in front of him, no doubt. But if we break that down, what is smart? What is smart? It doesn't mean a degree in that instance, But looking at that whole speech there, I thought to myself, reflecting after, what is smart? Smart is so many things, and it's just a little bit of influence you might have on someone to do the right thing, saying the kind words or the right words instead of the old stereotypical or pushing people down. Why not spend that minute of one day of your life just lifting somebody else? Why not just share that bit of kindness a little bit further, maybe not just in your house or in your company or in the local youth group. It could be international. It could be making a nice comment about somebody on social media instead of putting them down. So yeah, smart, I think, is what's inside us and how we relate to the outside world. And that's where we started our conversation today. And I think if everyone took that extra minute to look in that mirror and consider themselves, am I a decent human being? And if you believe you are, then why not go that extra 5 minutes, that extra mile, that extra little speech, that extra little word of kindness to someone, whoever it is, even if you don't know them, passing in the street or in the cafe or something, the world will be a much better place for it. And I think that sort of speaks or sums up how those youth at that graduation ceremony at that particular university would go away thinking, yeah, I'm smart because I've got a degree, but I'm sure along that pathway that they've taken that they'll think they're a lot smarter if they relate to a lot of those questions that were being asked there. And a lot of it was about diversity and equity and thinking of others. So a perfect way to round off, I think, there, Charles. I can't express how much I was pleased to be invited on your show. It's been an absolute awesome chat to be able to get a lot of things off my chest, discuss a lot of things that are spinning around in my mind and that, but also hopefully inspired one or two people out there to think a little bit differently as they go about their day and how they interact with their fellow humans, whether you love them or don't like them so much. Adding a bit of kindness means that we're all decent human beings.
Well, I'll say this. I'm smart because I had you on. So there I go. Pat myself on the back there, having you on. No, I really appreciate it. I talk about a little bit, but Gordon, like when I started this, it was just to, I was hoping that maybe a couple people here or there would listen. I knew my mom would probably watch all the episodes, right? But we would hope, right? Yeah, right. But it's definitely, I've made a lot of great connections, and I'm really, really happy because for some odd reason, I've really connected with a lot of guys over there in the UK. And I've really hit it off well. And I feel like it's been a great experience for me. And, we talked a little bit about technology, like right. I would have never had this opportunity to meet someone like you.
Yeah.
So many other folks. So, listen, I think all we can keep doing is keep being kind, keep trying to be smart and be kind, and go the extra effort to either tell somebody something nice, put something nice, valuable, informative up on social media. It's really easy to go on social media and complain.
Yeah, that's the easy route.
It is. So, well, listen, like I said, I appreciate it. I can't wait to start putting some clips out there, put this full episode out there. It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much, Gordon. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. It's only programs like this and yourself inviting the great many people that you host on here, and the guests that you have, that by that method we all learn. And I've enjoyed a whole bunch of your shows, and I learn every day, and that's what it's about.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for listening. As always, I appreciate the support and the people that view outside of my mom. I'd appreciate you, Mom, but everybody else, she has to. You all, I really appreciate it. So thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.